Okay, the next faction up for review is the Guerrillas. I have the Guerrillas as a independent force in Blood and Bayonets. You can field an all Guerrilla army if you want. But then that being said, they can be freely mixed with other forces, especially the Spanish and the English. So you can have an English force with Guerrilla fighters and support, or vice versa. You could have a majority Guerrilla force with maybe an English line or an English cavalry unit in support. The Guerrilla's size of the units is 6 to 12. This unit here is Guerrilla fighters, which represented on the screen, and they're in loose formation or skirmish form. It's actually skirmish formation. They can take that on. They have some special rules. They're ruthless. They're trained. You can upgrade them to veterans if you want to. They can also form into line if you want them to, and then they get the benefits of line, but then they lose the ability of skirmish. The reason I did that is the guerrilla forces throughout the war improved and started fighting less like for lack of a better term, guerrilla fighters or partisan type fighters, and moved into fighting actually in more stand-up battles. They had guerrilla armies by the end of the war that were, made up of 10,000 men, which is functionally a field army at that point. One of the reasons I did that is a lot of players want to create different forces throughout the campaigns, and some of them were more small bands, but then some of them were fought more like traditional forces. So you can do that. You can, put your guys in line and fire volleys just like other forces, and then have them more uniform, because as the war progressed, certain guerrilla units started to get supplied with uniforms, especially by the British, supplied with arms, so they started to become more uniform in appearance, thus looking more like a uniform national army versus a group of partisan fighters. In the beginning, they fought in a much more partisan form. That being said, some of them fought as partisans basically throughout the whole period. They also would ride on ships up and down the coast and raid, so they were linked to, you can take them with British naval forces too. This unit here, like I said, is representative of a group of skirmishers. If you notice, there's an officer involved. If you add an officer, the upgrade is they get Vanguard, which is a free move, and they get Intimidation, which if they win a round of close combat, your opponent has to roll an extra resolve die. Next up, I'm going to show you what they look like in line, and then we'll move on to some of the other forces that are available to the guerrilla army faction. What I have here, it's the same models. I've added a couple more of the kind of marching models in the background to represent guerrillas in line. This would be a full-size guerrilla unit. So in this scenario, if they play fire volley fire, they have 11 guys that are capable, because the officer's not, so it'd be 11 plus 3, 14 shots. The miniatures themselves, which are I use them in both the same two pictures, are from War Games Atlantic. They're 3D prints from War Games Atlantic, and they're pretty nice quality. They are multi-part in the sense that you can do head swaps, and the arms, the bodies are all one piece. I'm going to show some pictures of guerrilla cavalry and some STLs that you can, use to print out guerrilla cavalry, more guerrillas on foot, guerrilla lancers. So that's, I'm going to show you this one, then we're going to flip to some pictures because I don't have the models. Eventually I'll get the models. Actually, I'm planning on 3D printing some of these guys out soon for, participation games and such like that. So here's some guerrillas in line, what it would look like. And we're going to move on to the next couple pictures here. Okay, I have a few pictures of guerrilla mounted lancers. If you noticed, they're pretty anachronistic. They kind of look like lancers from the earlier century. But they can also be more uniformed, as I said before, with the line. The regular guerrillas, as the war progressed, they got access to more uniforms and more proper military styled uniforms for the period. So you could take guerrilla lancers, like cavalry units, 4 to 12 models. They work like they're trained, but you can make them veteran. They have the ruthless ability, and if you give them an officer, they're going to get Vanguard and intimidation. So they could be some of the better cavalry. This represents, them going after all the French supply lines and all the French dispatch riders, and just the movement of French troops. France tied down, or Napoleon tied down, literally hundreds of thousands of troops trying to defend his supply lines into Spain. One of the results of this is the French started to bring Lancer units into the peninsula to try to counter the Spanish Lancers. I'm going to show a few images of, like I said, 3D prints that you can get. I'm still in the process of printing these out, or I'm going to print them out. Also, the Spanish guerrillas have access to artillery. They would capture guns, and then as the war progressed, they would be supplied with guns. As the war progressed, they'd actually get integrated into regular Spanish armies more and more, because the Spanish recognized they're one of their better fighting forces. They had a lot of experience. I have numerous special commanders linked into the guerrillas, so you can take special commanders to alter the way the forces work and represent certain armies for certain time periods. And as time goes on, I'll release more special commanders as, free PDFs, so you can add to your armies to make them more interesting. So, as your play goes on, you don't get stagnated into one kind of just one force. It's just constantly opening up different ideas. There's also unit upgrades, for certain units that represent historical people that, did things like the Siege of Saragossa, certain sieges and stuff, that there were footnotes in history or notes in history that you can add to certain units to give them buffs. Like I said, at the end of this, I'm going to do a couple shots of some of the STLs. They're on my mini factory, but you could probably get them from the creator directly. I'm not sure. He doesn't pay me or anything. I'm just plugging it because I like the models, and I want to put models on the tabletop that are Spanish guerrillas. So we're going to move on from there. I'll show you a couple pictures of those, and then we'll wrap up the Spanish guerrilla army faction review. Okay, here are a couple of the shots of some STLs that are available to make your guerrillas. You have some guerrillas on foot, some Lancer guerrillas, and then there's one there that is more uniformed. He has the Shako, which you could definitely use as just Spanish Lancers, or you can make your guerrilla force look more, uniformed in appearance. It's however you want to go. That being said, I'm pretty sure Perry Brothers does make some Spanish guerrillas. If you want, just to reach out and buy them in metals. I don't know if any other, I'm racking my brain to think of any other ones that make them. You could take the Blood and Plunder cavalry and kind of bodge them into guerrillas if you want, like put lances, do some kit bashing. But the kind of neat thing about them is they're not very uniform, so you can get away with a lot of anachronistic or older looking miniatures that work in this time period. I'm not 100% sure. I mentioned too that there's another force another unit you can take, which is militia, which is like a downgraded version of the regular guerrillas, the guerrilla fighters. They fight in line. They're cheaper points, so it's a way for you to build out your force if you need that extra bit of points, or you just want like a unit to kind of hold the back or hold an objective or something like that. So that's basically the guerrilla force in a nutshell. It's not as varied as a lot of the other forces. It's basically, infantry and cavalry and cannons. There's not a ton of different specific units, but I've left enough room in the way I've designed the list for players to model their armies to look like specific forces, if that's something they want to do. And there's special characters in all the forces in Blood and Bayonets, all of them, that you can add in to give different flavors to how you look. So that's a wrap on the guerrilla force. The next one I'm going to attempt to do is the Portuguese. So until next time, check it out.